Well, I gotta get this video done so I can get some sleep. I've been getting woke up all the time. And you can tell when you're really supposed to do something because all hell break loose, try to keep you from doing it. And that's what's been happening with this. So the last video that I posted, first one I ever posted to Facebook, wife saw it and she's like, "You posted a video to Facebook?" Because it's way out of my character. And you didn't give me a shout out? Well, sorry. Here's your shout out, dear. Today is our 34th wedding anniversary. And anybody that can put up with me for 34 years is pretty special, I guess, in my book. So I'm thinking about doing this video, and God starts whispering in my ear. So this is what we're going to talk about today. It's marriage and what I believe it entails. And it's going to be a pretty bumpy ride. I think I'm going to upset a few people, probably a lot of people. So if you don't want to have to find out if what I'm telling you is the truth or not, and do some research of your own, I suggest you turn it off. Don't watch it, because once you hear what I have to say, you're going to have to find out if it's true or not. Don't believe anything anybody tells you. You always need to find out for yourself if it's true or not. So I wrote a bunch of this down because I'm not very good at this, so I'm going to be reading a lot, so don't get upset about that. So marriage is a type of a blood covenant, and to understand it and all its repercussions, we have to understand what a blood covenant is. We have types and shadows of everything to help us understand how God sees things. We have children to help understand being a child of God. We are parents to help us understand how God sees us as children, and how, we're supposed to discipline and correction is done, because God disciplines and corrects us. We have marriage to help understand being faithful and what it means to be a bride of Christ. We have everything so screwed up now, and we don't understand what it means to be the bride of Christ. And we don't understand our roles and the position that we're supposed to be in. We listen to everything that's on TV nowadays, and they got everything goes screwed up. You would think that you're supposed to just jump from relationship to relationship. Anytime somebody says something that upsets you, you leave. You go find somebody else. And once you get tired of them, you go back to who you was with before, because now they've done something that you like. And it's not the way relationships work. There are serious consequences for the breaking of a covenant, especially a blood covenant. So let's find out what a blood covenant is. A covenant is a promise, contract, a binding agreement between two parties. In Genesis, God tells Abraham to kill a heifer, a ram, a goat, a dove, and a pigeon. Then he is to cut them in half, except the birds, and lay the pieces in 2 rows, leaving a path down the middle. The parties involved would walk the path between the animals to say that this is to be done to me if I do not keep my oath. And there's a slight difference in this blood oath that God made with Abraham. When evening came, God appeared in the form of a smoking firepot and a flaming torch and passed between the pieces. But Abraham had fallen into a deep sleep, and a thick and dreadful darkness had fallen over him. So God alone passed through the pieces of dead animals, so the covenant was sealed by God alone. Nothing depended on Abraham. Everything depended on God. When God made his promise to Abraham, since there was no one greater than he swore by himself. This is known as the Abrahamic covenant. Abraham was to seal his covenant with God by circumcision, outlined in Genesis. Now I was gonna give you all the Bible verses, but I've decided not to, so that you have to do a little deeper searching of your own and not just flip to a page. Maybe you should start reading everything. All who were adopted into the faith were to do the same thing. They were sealed by the circumcision. The Mosaic covenant is also a blood covenant, as it required a sprinkling of blood on the tabernacle, the scroll, and the people. The law requires that everything be sprinkled, be cleansed and with blood, and without the shedding of blood there is no forgiveness. I'd always wondered in the story of Cain and Abel why God didn't have respect into Cain's offering. They both gave the first fruits of what they had, but the difference is right there. Cain's offering did not have the shedding of blood. In the Mosaic covenant, the blood of animals served as a covering or atonement for the people, for the sins of the people. The animal's life was given in place of the sinner's life. The blood of animals was temporary appeasement, and the final ultimate blood covenant where Christ shed his blood for us. So a blood covenant is a promise made by God that he will choose a people for himself and bless them. And give me some more light on this subject because I can't see. There we go. Like I said, it's pretty early in the morning. It's pretty dark in here. Man could not be faithful to keep his end, so Christ had to die in our place. So the new covenant was between him and God, and we enter through the circumcision of our heart by the acceptance of Christ in our place for our sins. You want to look that up? It's in Romans and Colossians. More places than that, but alright, that's a blood covenant that God made with us. Now let's look at what people did in the blood covenants. It comes from the Hebrew word berith and the Greek word diateke, which means to make a covenant by cutting to make the blood flow. This act is referred to as cutting the covenant. It is performed in a sacred ceremony because of the tremendous significance of the event. The blood covenant is the most binding covenant any two people or groups of people can enter into. Once committed, the only way out is by death of one or both of the covenant makers. Alright, here's some steps into making a blood covenant. There is an exchange of coats. The coat signifies the identity and authority of the person, group, or tribe entering the contract. The coats are exchanged with each participant in the ceremony. The exchange is saying, "Everything I am, everything I represent now belongs to you. All my possessions, all that I am, my very self I give to you. I am no longer my own. I now belong to you." And he exchanged weapon belts. On these belts was everything that you could imagine as far as protection goes, bows, knives, swords. And the exchange signifies that all my strength now belongs to you. Your enemies are now my enemies are now yours. Your friends are mine, my friends are yours. I will serve you if you ever need me, and you will serve me if I ever need you. Then they exchange vows and the walk in the blood. An animal is now sacrificed by splitting it down the backbone. It is usually a bull, a goat, or a lamb. The halves are laid open with a pool of blood between them. We'll walk in a figure 8 between the halves and meet in the middle of the pool of blood. The figure 8 represents infinity or a never-ending relationship. We meet face to face, and there are pronounced blessings and the curses of the covenant. It usually go, the one who breaks his covenant will die just like this animal died, and an oath or a pledge that just as this animal gave his life, so I will give my life if necessary. Then the accounting of all belongings for exchange if and when needed. While standing in the blood, we give an account of all possessions and declare they will be available if ever they are needed. They exchange names. Each takes the other's name to himself. The exchange of names represents death to being an individual. You are now one. The exchange of blood and the cutting of the covenant. While standing in the blood face to face, a knife is used to cut it in either of the palms or the wrists. We either shake hands or touch wrists together to mix the blood. In some cultures, the blood from both participants is drizzled in a cup of wine and stirred together, and we both drink from the cup. The mark of the covenant. While still in this position, a dark substance such as charcoal would be rubbed in the wound so that when healed, it would leave a dark scar clearly visible to anyone. By doing this, it would be clearly evident you were in covenant with someone else. The exchange of the covenant meal, which usually consisted of bread and wine. We break a loaf of bread and we place a piece of the bread into our covenant partner's mouth. When we do that, we are demonstrating that a part of each of us has gone into the other. Likewise, the wine signifies our blood, since the life is in the blood, and we're taking each other's life into ourselves. Kind of sounds like communion. We're now considered friends and are governed by an attitude toward each other called love and kindness. A relationship that says, I will never leave you or forsake you. I will always do what's best for you, even if it means my own hurt. So we see a lot of similarities there in our current marriage ceremonies. It should also be noted that government has zero to do with marriage. Church didn't have anything to do with it either. It is a pact made between a man and a woman, sealed by them and God. So, the marriage ceremony was to be done with the blessing of both families, and they are both to be present for it. The man and the woman enter into a covenant with each other and then consummate that by joining themselves together in the act of sex. Now, both were expected to be virgins. During the first sex act, the hymen is broken and there's shedding of blood. Well, there's going to be some what might consider explicit, so if you have a problem with that, you might want to tune out now also. During the first sex act, the hymen is broken and there's shedding of blood. The sheet was to be brought out and shown to all to prove that the marriage was consummated and also confirm that the woman was a virgin. There were serious consequences if she was found not to be a virgin. By serious, I mean she was to be taken to the edge of town and stoned to death by everybody. Now, I can already tell some of you are going to be saying that the hymen can be broken by other things, possibly, but we also know that some serious stretching and tearing goes on the first time that you have sex. Plus, there's more going on there. There's exchanging of body fluids. If you want confirmation on that, just look to your precious scientists for that. They can tell you there's a lot more going on there. There's also something psychologically that happens on your first time that you have sex. A special bond is made with that person, and I guarantee you, if you really think about it, you would agree with that. I read a woman's article while I was doing research on all this, and she took special exception to that statement. She says that her study has led her to the fact that all covenants require the shedding of blood to seal the covenant, which we've already discussed. Marriage is a covenant that is sealed by the shedding of blood, of a virgin's blood during her first sexual experience with her husband. She agreed with that. She says she finds this to be grotesque and potentially dangerous. She also thinks it to be unbiblical. She says, do all biblical covenants require the shedding of blood? According to the Westminster Shorter Catechism, God entered into a covenant with Adam before the fall. So the question was, what special act of providence did God exercise toward man in the state wherein he was created? And the answer in that book was, when God created man, he entered into a covenant of life with him upon condition of perfect obedience, forbidding him to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil upon the pain of death. I submit she missed the answer. It was right there. It was before the fall, so there was no need for shedding of blood. Man's sins is what created the need for blood sacrifice. I would also like to interject, what would have happened if Adam had not eaten of the fruit and had told God to make him another woman from another rib of himself? I've also often wondered about that. Why Adam didn't just ask for another helpmate. Must have really liked the woman. But I digress. She also says, second, marriage is a creation ordinance instituted by God before the fall. Why would there be a need for shedding of blood before sin and death entered into the world? There wouldn't. Did Eve bleed on her wedding night? Well, they weren't expelled from Eden yet. They had no concept of good and evil. I don't think they had any concept of sex. I don't think they had sex. Can't prove that, but I don't think they knew that yet. So I don't see that there. She goes on, the curse brought pain to childbirth and all it entails. There was no reason for Eve to have experienced that pain before she sinned. She didn't experience it because she didn't have the children before that. They were expelled from Eden. That all came afterwards. She continues, third reason she thinks it's unbiblical is that we now live under the covenant of grace after the sacrifice of Christ. Why would any Christian who has been bought by the precious blood of Christ, teach that a woman must offer a sacrifice of blood to seal her marriage. It's a different covenant. What Christ did for us has nothing to do with the marriage covenant. So what about if you get remarried? There's no shedding then. The deed has been done. We're talking about how it's supposed to be, not how we've made it. Adultery and desertion are the only two explicit reasons why someone may divorce. Marriage is to be for life and only dissolved by death. So choose wisely. So the Pharisees come to Jesus and they test him by asking, is it lawful to divorce one's wife for any cause? And he answered, have you not read, who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, therefore shall a man leave his father and mother, and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. They said to them, why then did Moses command one to give a certificate of divorce? He said to them, because of the hardness of your hearts, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. And I say that whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. The word used is porneia and is translated sexual immorality. So in the law, if you want to go look it up in Leviticus, it gives all the laws and what you need to know about them. It itemizes out the forms of sexual perversion, sexual immorality, and this is what it basically has to say about it. And you shall not lie sexually with your neighbor's wife, so you make yourself unclean with her. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. And you shall not lie with any animal, and so make yourself unclean with it. Neither shall any woman give herself to an animal and lie with it. It is perversion. If a man commits adultery with the wife of his neighbor, both the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. If a man lies with his father's wife, he has uncovered his father's nakedness, and both of them shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them. If a man lies with his daughter-in-law, both of them shall surely be put to death. They have committed perversion. Their blood is upon them. If a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them. If a man lies with an animal, he shall surely be put to death, and you shall kill the animal. If a man takes a sister, a daughter of his father or a daughter of his mother, and sees her nakedness, and she sees his nakedness, it is a disgrace, and they shall be cut off in the sight of the children of their people. I know it's going to be really hard for a lot of people. I didn't say it, the Bible did. And I know homosexuality is widely accepted now. God still doesn't accept it. And I know people are going to take a lot of exception to that. That's just the way things are. Now, can you not be forgiven? I don't believe there's anything that can't be forgiven, but the not accepting what Christ did for you is the only sin that can't be forgiven. So I'm not condemning you. There's now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. So if you sin, just like when I sin, you seek forgiveness for it, and you try to turn from it and not do it anymore. It's what we're supposed to do. But I have to answer for my sins. You're going to have to answer for your sins. So you take it up with God, not with me. So we hear what Paul has to say in the New Testament about some of this divorce. And he says, "To the rest I say, not the Lord." This is Paul speaking. "That if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever and she consents to live with him, she should not divorce her. If any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever and he consents to live with her, she should not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy because of her husband. Otherwise your children would be unclean. But as it is, they are holy. But if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. Such cases, the brother or sister is not enslaved. God has called you to peace. For how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband, or do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife?" So spiritual incompatibility is potential justification for divorce. But that was Paul speaking, so I don't know how much I would base that on. What about physical abuse? The Bible doesn't specifically address the physical justification for divorce from physical abuse, but there are some things that it says about it. It says first it should be said that physical abuse is a sin. The Bible commands that Christians pursue righteousness, godliness, faith, love, steadfastness, and gentleness. Husbands are told likewise, "Husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered." You're also supposed to be gentle in your dealings with one another. Physical abuse is a sin and should be named as such by everybody in authority, or actually anybody. It shouldn't be tolerated. The Bible disqualifies abusive men from serving in leadership positions within the church. In 1 Timothy, it says, "If anyone aspires to the office of an overseer, he desires a noble task. Therefore, an overseer must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, sober-minded, not drunkard, not a violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money, no striker." So a man who hits his wife is disqualified from serving as an elder in the church. Now, it doesn't expressly say that you can divorce, but if you have any doubts about what you should do when you divorce somebody, don't have sex with anybody else, and you won't be an adulterer. So when the Bible permits divorce, it is so that the wronged or abandoned party, abandonment was another reason. If somebody just left you and never came back, that was another reason. The abandoned party may remarry. That is what a certificate of divorce is. Therefore, when a divorce is biblically permissible, it is by definition also permissible for the wrong or abandoned to remarry, and vice versa. If the reason you got divorced wasn't biblical, then your new marriage is biblical. All So, some thoughts that I have on that is, me and the wife got into a discussion one time, and we got into a discussion about love, what love is. And I told her one time that what draws a person to another person at first is lust. She took exception to that, but I think if you think about it, it's totally true. Initially, what brings you to attracts you to somebody is lust. Then you develop affection for that person, and this is what most people say when they get a divorce, is that I don't love that person anymore. No, you don't have affection for that person anymore. Love is something that you do, and you can't fall out of love. You choose not to love. The Bible gives us the definition of love. Love is patient. Love is kind. It doesn't envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. It always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. And that brought me to another deal, knowledge. I began a different journey quite a while ago as to what I led up to that point in my life. I think that we don't know anything, and the Bible says that. If we think we know anything, we don't know anything as we ought to yet. And there's been so much that we have been lied to about, not just in the world, but in the church. And you have to begin your journey on your own and seek the truth on your own, because nobody else is going to give it to you. And when your eyes start being opened, it's going to be pretty heavy. Don't dismay. God will see you through. Start your journey. Seek the truth, and the truth will set you free.